Okay, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and trust but verify right quick. We're opening up the channel. I need to like start doing this, more effectively. All right, sick. Nope, we are good to go. Hey, welcome back. I am your boy Lucid, aka Mike, aka the dude whose team doesn't know how to win outside of its own zip code. We are talking Week 10 college football tonight, and a lot to get to. I think that if you look at the schedule, this coming weekend, you might kind of say, like, okay, there's like one, maybe two decent games worth kind of keeping a finger on the pulse for. We disagree heavily here. The ears, we're back to the noise canceling. I believe last video I just had no ear protection whatsoever, and I just simply can't have that. Let's just get this out of the way. Happy Halloween. Got a little bit of fizz in the eye there. We love that. We love that. So as per usual, we're going to do this the same way that we do every week. We're going to review the early weekday games that we didn't get to do any early predictions for. We're going to talk about what happened. We're going to talk about kind of what I thought was going to happen going into them. And then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the week. We're going to talk ranked games first. Then we're going to go back to the top of the schedule and just kind of touch on some unranked matchups that I'm interested in, that I think are neat. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Talking Tuesday, all right? I need to stop. Okay, no, I won't go that far. I don't need to stop loving anything, okay? I suggest that all of you do the same thing, right? Don't ever be afraid to love what you love. I will say this, though. My obsession with Bronco Mendenhall and the New Mexico State Aggies, it might be time to love it quietly, because every time I kind of feel like they're going to put up a fight, or in this instance, I thought that they could beat FIU. I was wrong, and I was wrong big. FIU had a receiver go for 295 yards in this game. I drafted him in daily fantasy. He got me 61.5 points. Absolutely absurd. Last name Rivers. Do not know his first name. Ball out kid. Like, seriously. Like, oh, Eric Rivers. It's literally on the screen. You just can't see it due to editing. Wow. I don't even play bingo, but if I did, that wasn't on my bingo card. So props to FIU. I actually grew up pretty damn close to FIU. Sorry, I have stickers. The kids tatted me up too. I think I have like stamps all over my arm. You probably can't tell, or care for that matter. Texas State over Louisiana. I thought that Texas State was going to be able to come out and kind of control this game with the multitude of weapons that they have on offense, and Louisiana is, how do I want to put this? The teams in the Sun Belt that I think a lot of people were expecting to regress this year did, and the teams that were expected to progress didn't. So we've kind of arrived in this situation where we have no great teams in the conference comparative to their competition in conference, right? I'm not talking about the best team in the Sun Belt being comparable to a good college football team as the average fan is typically interested in. But what I'm kind of getting at is that in terms of like conference to conference, or interconference competition, the Sun Belt's kind of wide open, and Louisiana just kind of showed that again. Like, I mean, it's a one possession win. It's not like an absolutely resounding win for them, but it's a good win against what I perceive to be a good team in their conference. So good for them. Sam Houston and Louisiana Tech. If I had watched this game, which I didn't, and I would advise literally anybody on the planet to not do that. Um, you don't have to. It's already done. You don't have to worry about this game anymore. I'm just telling you, if you're watching this from the past via some random mumbo jumbo that's taken place in a crazy future that we don't currently occupy, do not watch this game. 9-3, 9-3. If I had known, I would have bet my entire bank account on the under for this game. Yeah, we're not talking about this one. I had some daily fantasy picks in this one that gave me some steaming fat 0 points on the scoreboard that took my 61.5 from Eric Rivers and FIU and rendered them useless. Hey, Bubba, I'm recording right now. Can you please go play? Go on, Bubba. I love you. Always trying to chase me. I'm trying to get this episode in real quick so we can go trick-or-treating. So I'm trying to make sure he doesn't interrupt too much. Bo would be fine if he came in here. But Axel, he's a bit of a terrorist. I don't know. So going to the Wednesday night games, Jacksonville State able to pull it off against Liberty. I think after the loss to Kennesaw State last week, like Liberty might just kind of be like a little poopy butt because they kind of expected to run the table. And that is not what happened. Trey Stewart goes for 232 yards in this game for Jacksonville State. Absolute insanity. Love to see it for a Jacksonville State fan. If you're a Liberty fan, I kind of talked about this last week after the loss to Kennesaw. Even if you had gone undefeated, I feel like a fan of Liberty might have expected, or rather hoped to be the at-large, or the fifth conference champion bid for the playoff. I mean, we don't have to worry about it now because it's a moot point. You lost, but I said it last week, and now like it's just kind of proving itself. Like, for one, you're not as good as you think you are, and two, that schedule that you play against, it's not doing you any favors, especially now that you've lost 2 weeks in a row. So for the Flames, my condolences, but you guys have a lot to play for in front of you. You're not out of the conference race yet, so get it together and charge through November, with conviction, and you can still play for something substantive, but it'll be something substantive compared to your, or should I say, it'll be something substantive for a team like you. And I'll just leave it at that. Kennesaw State, they did not continue their winning ways. Western Kentucky had this one start to finish. Caden Beltcamp goes off for 276 yards. And that was really the story of the game. He was distributing the ball pretty well. He didn't have a single receiver go for over 100 yards, but he didn't really need to because he just had a multitude of weapons, much in the same way that I kind of expected Texas State to be able to do against Louisiana. Western Kentucky was able to do that against Kennesaw, which overall isn't that surprising. Yes, they had the upset, win last week against Liberty, and that's great for them, but they're just not a great football team. They play tough. They play with a lot of moxie and heart, and I appreciate that. But Western Kentucky had this from start to finish, so good for them. Tulane Charlotte tonight. I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this game other than I think Tulane might be one of the best teams in the country in Group of Five terms that nobody really talks about or thinks about. I mean, this team took Kansas State wire to wire. And Charlotte doesn't really stand a chance. The line right now is Tulane minus 14.5. I have to agree with it. If I was actually putting money on this game, I'd probably take over 14.5 if I'm being perfectly honest. So yeah, give me the green wave all the way on this one. My child is screaming right now. I have no idea what's going on. They're just kind of vibing and playing, but they like to project, we'll say. Georgia State, UConn favored by 8.5 points. at home against Georgia State. I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like I have a profound understanding of these two teams. I'll just say this, that UConn. Oh, here we go. Yeah, number one. I hate it. I have something. I believe it has something to do with the lights and then how much I'm talking, because like the lights do kind of overwhelm my eyes a little bit because I'm looking at a 2K monitor in front of me, and like the white from the, you know, schedule sheet that I have in front of me is a bit overwhelming from time to time. Maybe I need to start like shifting the camera over here and doing it on this screen exclusively. I don't know. I could lower the brightness too. All these things that we will consider in the near future, but we need to kind of keep moving, right? Yeah, no, props to UConn for having the season that they're having right now. I mean, it's not historical or anything like that. I do like what they're doing, and I hope they continue doing it. So South Florida at Florida Atlantic. Byron Brown's not playing in this game. I know there's a lot of talk and hopeful thinking or wishful thinking that he's going to be able to come back, and FAU doesn't stand a chance. When you're minus 2.5 favorite against an FAU team that just hasn't been great, kind of tells me that Vegas knows something I don't, and that something is probably that Byron Brown's not playing. So as far as this game, not touching with a 10-foot pole, other than if I did have to bet on something, I would probably bet that Byron Brown doesn't play. Boise? Hi, please go. Out. Axel Maddox. He's being an absolute goober right now. Yeah, Boise State against San Diego State. This is probably a line that I would take, like minus 23.5. San Diego State's offense doesn't play with any tempo. They're really kind of trying to slow things down because they know that, for one, they're not going to get a ton of possessions. Or should I say, they're not going to get a lot of scoring opportunities is a better way to put it. Their offense isn't dangerous enough to threaten that on a near consistent enough basis. So they're going to play slow. They're going to play conservative. They're going to burn clock. And if they do score, they aren't going to score a lot. Whereas Boise State is Boise State. Their defensive line absolutely kicked UNLV's ass last week. And San Diego State is not great in the trenches. So, yeah, give me Boise to cover, but I would take the under 56.5 there because we're getting late in the season. Boise State is starting to very much so look like the team from the group of five that is going to get a playoff berth, as long as they don't mess it up. And how do you not mess it up? You pull your starters. You play conservative in the second half against teams like this that you're supposed to beat soundly. You know, just please be smart. Don't Lincoln Riley your way into a discussion that we're going to be having here in a little bit. All right, so going into Saturday, right? Let's talk about the big game in Happy Valley. Okay, Ohio State on the road taking on Penn State. It is an absolute crime against humanity that Penn State is reserving its night whiteout game for my Washington Huskies when this game exists on the schedule. They're banging into my door right now, and it's like high key driving me crazy because they have these little eggs and they're like rolling them on the floor. They're getting serious FOMO right now, so I gotta go. Couple things about this game. One, Ohio State, big play potential, but not a lot of it showing up on paper, or on film for that matter. I know there's the Jeremiah Smith footage, but like one player does not a big play offense make, especially when you're going up a defense of the caliber that Penn State possesses. We kind of saw that against Oregon. Like they had to kind of play a little bit more multiple on offense in order to march down the field and do what they were able to do. Penn State, on the other hand, it's basically just the Tyler Warren button. Unless Bo Pribula starts, he was efficiently moving the ball downfield for them. But I think the expectation is that Drew Aller is going to get the start here. And if that ends up being the case, well, then I have a couple questions. Like, number one, is Drew Aller going to move the ball as efficiently as we saw. Hang on, I got to stop. He's doing it deliberately to annoy me. My son he's me. And he's very good at being me. Mom, Dad, if you're watching, I got all of the payback that I deserved, and I'm still getting it. So anyway, I have a couple questions about this game. I talked about the Drew Aller and the Bo Pribula piece, right? Is Drew Aller going to be the effective mover of the ball that Bo Pribula was able to be last week for Penn State? And is Ohio State going to be able to protect Will Howard, and are we going to have to lean more on his legs in order to stay upright and push the ball downfield? And what I mean by that is that Ohio State has lost their 2 left tackles, their starter and their backup. So they're going to kick the starting left guard out to tackle, I believe is the plan, and then bring their backup left guard in against one of the best defensive lines in the country. That's scary because Ohio State's offense got pushed around, or offensive line rather, got pushed around by Nebraska's defensive line. And I'm not trying to say Nebraska's defensive line is bad. What I'm saying is that Penn State's is better, like immeasurably so. So very concerning if you're a Buckeye fan there, but what's not concerning is your secondary has shown weakness against teams with weapons on the outside. Penn State, since the West Virginia game, like Harrison Wallace has not been a factor, so now it's basically just Tyler Warren go kill. You have the talent to be able to isolate him. I mean, they're going to give you a ton of different looks. Andy Kotelnicki is going to scheme things up that is going to challenge your defensive posture. But is he going to be able to scheme enough to overcome the talent deficit on the perimeter? I don't know. These are very, very important questions for this game. Right now, the line, Ohio State is a 3-point favorite on the road. I can't really say for certain that I disagree. This might show up later on my weekly locks page, just because of how coin tossy, if I can say that. This is how coin tossy I think of it. Yeah, very, very interesting game, and I'm definitely going to be glued to this one Saturday morning, bright and early. So tune in, folks. It'd be the funniest thing in the world if just a week after Duke goes to overtime against SMU, who is firmly in the ACC conference title race picture, if they go on the road and upset Miami. Miami currently a 20-point favorite. Duke is playing certainly the most spirited football that they've played all season up to this point. I don't know that they have played a team to the caliber of Miami quite yet. That said, I kind of touched on this earlier, talking about looking at the schedule and saying that there's only maybe 1 or 2 games that are of consequence here. This is one of those ones where I'm like, that week, it happens every season, unless you're talking about last year where we didn't really have a week like this that I'm talking about. But there's one every season where just weird shit happens. This is a weird shit happens game, especially with the way Duke played against SMU last week, which, by the way, is averaging, I believe, SMU is the team averaging the most points per game in the FBS right now. Please fact check me on that. I want to say that I read that sometime earlier this week. So to be able to hold them under 5 scores, being that their average is in like the high 40s right now, and they just scraped away just under 30 points. So if Duke's defense is playing that good, and Miami's defense has shown a susceptibility to be scored on, I'm not saying that Malik Murphy and this Duke offense is the offense that's going to be able to pull the trigger, hit that go button, and push the ball downfield in chunk plays and take advantage of the susceptibilities that do exist in Miami secondary. But wouldn't it be funny if they did? Is all I'm saying. Like, my money would go on Miami in this game. This is just one that I'll have my eye on because it has a funk about it that I kind of just sit back and look, and I'm like, do I think it's going to happen? No. But if it happened, I would probably look back retrospectively and say, yeah. I could see, yep, okay. Sure. Anyway, Army's going to absolutely wax Air Force. If I'm wrong, throw shit on the walls of my house when I'm not here. Only when I'm not here. I just don't want you bothering me when I'm trying to rest, in my place of zen. So just do it when I'm gone. Yeah, Army's beating Air Force. Illinois is a 3-point underdog at home to Minnesota. Okay, Max Brosmer has been playing well for the Golden Gophers, and I picked them last week. All right, as underdogs as well against Maryland. Illinois is not a... I have to choose my words carefully here because there is a way that they become this thing by the end of the year, if simply for the fact that their record is what it ends up being. But I do not think of Illinois as a top 15 team. Okay. Where they're at now, I think is perfectly acceptable and could be where they continue to reside for the remainder of the season. That said, Minnesota presents enough challenges for me to respect them as an opponent against this Illinois team. I think Illinois is just a way more complete team, and they're at home where they have been playing exceptionally well all year. Give me the Illini at home against Minnesota, please. Moving on. And I would go point spread on that one. Right now, I don't have the money line in front of me, but I would talk about it if I did. Are we about to have our first ever? First ever sneeze on the channel. If you were here, you were here first. I should probably... Oh, God, what have I done? Anywho. Ow, that hurt. A game that should include a ranked opponent. We'll talk about that later. But going on to number 1 Oregon on the road at the Big House, taking on Michigan. This kind of gives the same vibes as like the Duke-Miami game. Like, do I think it's going to happen? No, but wouldn't it be funny? But I think that the extra layer of like just baked into this is that it is at the Big House. This is by far the most hostile environment that Oregon is going to play in all season. And Michigan does not present enough concerns for me based off of what I've seen from the Ducks so far this year for me to sit here and say, like, man, I don't know, like that crowd gets jumping enough and it could get ugly quick for the Ducks. Like, no, it's like I could see them making a couple mistakes that they don't typically make. I just don't really see Michigan as a team being able to capitalize on those mistakes with enough fervor to threaten an upset, especially as a 14.5-point underdog. That said, this is, I think, the first time in 3 weeks, because we had Purdue, then Illinois. So, yeah, so in 3 weeks, since the Ohio State game, this is the first time in 3 weeks that Oregon has been less than a 20-plus point favorite against their opponent. So, I mean, I guess they're respecting Michigan's defense, but here's the thing. If Michigan's offense can't get in rhythm and can't score against this Oregon defense, which is very talented, what does it matter? Because like their defense is good, but if Washington could score on you, if Illinois could score on you, Oregon scoring on you, just don't throw to Will Johnson, and even sometimes do, because like if the refs aren't just completely blind and letting him hold every receiver that lines up on him one on one, he has shown the ability to be beat. And I wouldn't say beat easily, but like if you have a good player out wide, or if you get him in an alignment mismatch against a slot guy who's really fast, Tez Johnson, he's vulnerable. He's an NFL guy, sure. Like sign the checks, whatever. Like whatever you want to like do or call it. Like go ahead, be my guest. But like he's not Champ Bailey, okay? Like I don't know how else I can say that. Give me Oregon, please, and thank you. Give me Georgia over Florida. I think that this is the best defense that Florida's going to face all year, and oh dear God, you have a true freshman quarterback starting in this game. Give me the Dogs. Give me them to cover. Same point spread actually for both games, except Georgia is at home, meaning that Oregon is actually would technically be favored more at home against Michigan. I digress. I actually took Carson Beck and Trevor Etienne and Chris Bell, not Chris Bell. It'll come to me. It's not coming to me. Wide receiver, first name begins with an A. I literally just picked him in daily fantasy a couple hours ago after looking at a breakdown for this game. I'm taking 3 Georgia players in this daily fantasy lineup during this time segment because it's Georgia and it's Florida. So I could go into more detail, but do I really need to, I guess is my question. Iowa State hosting Texas Tech. Baron Morton been okay. Brooks, the running back, been more than okay. Iowa State defense, been okay. Iowa State offense, been okay. Iowa State continuing to prove me wrong. That is the number 11 next to their name. 13.5 point favorite at home. Puts them around a 10-point favorite. Neutral site. Still a touchdown on the road. Give me the Cyclones. Indiana on the road to Michigan State. I like Indiana, not just because they whooped my team's ass last weekend. I predicted that to happen. Literally told my father it was going to happen. It happened. It's history. It is what it is. Indiana, that's a damn good football team. I said that last week too. This team is infinitely better than I think maybe even its own expectations going into this season. I think Kurt Signetti is very good at galvanizing a program and making them believe that they are more than what they are. I think the problem is that this team actually is more than what they thought they were coming into this season. Do I think that they're a national title contender? Do I think they're like last year's Washington? Not so much, because if certain things from an execution perspective go differently for like Washington, for instance, last week, Washington had a very clear path to success against this team. And I just don't think Washington's all that great this year. So what does that mean about my opinions of Indiana? I think they're a team like winning is a skill for one. Okay. So I'm not trying to like diminish anything that they've done. They have handled their business, especially, week to week, like when the expectation is that they're going to eventually hit a wall and they don't. They kind of just pick the wall up and throw it down the road. And they say, hey, maybe later, but not right now. And if I'm being perfectly frank, I think what they're saying in the office is, fuck you. There is no wall. He's getting his costume on. There is no wall. And if there is, and we're wrong, we are running full speed at it, and we're daring it to stay up. So give me Indiana over Michigan State. I do think Michigan State puts up a fight. I think this is the most hostile environment that Indiana will have been in all year, just like I talked about Oregon going to the big house. So 2 Michigan stadiums, 2 different games. I think the teams that are favored going on the road in those games could potentially see themselves in a bit of a weird spot because they just haven't found themselves in a situation like they will find themselves this weekend. And this is kind of leaning into that whole kind of like, wouldn't it be funny, kind of a weird weekend where you don't really think so, but maybe, right? Keep your eye on it is all I'm saying. Give me Indiana, but keep your eye on it. Kansas State at Houston. This is another one where Houston has shown an ability against clearly superior teams this year to just be like, I don't like the way you looked at me. Punches you right in the throat. And you're like, oh. And in I believe it was TCU's case, TCU never got off the mat, right? Hang on. I'm going to fact check myself on that one because I don't want to speak out of turn. Yeah, it was TCU. They beat TCU. We're not going to talk about food, a.k.a. rice, okay? Everybody beats food. 2 rules in power conference football. Don't schedule games. Oh, he's coming in the door again. Don't schedule games outside time windows that your fans would normally be available to watch them. 1. And then number 2, don't lose to food. That's pretty simple. But yeah, no, TCU never got off the mat and lost 30-19, and then they beat Utah, which I guess the longer that the season progresses, the whole Utah situation is honestly just becoming like somewhat annoying to discuss, quite frankly. So yeah, keep an eye on it. I have Kansas State winning this game. I drafted Avery Johnson in this game. I wanted to go DJ Giddens, but there was a couple of more tasty running back options value-wise. My opinion, not everybody's, in this time slate. I could go more in depth on it. I just won't. So yeah, give me Kansas State, 13-point favorite on the road. But wouldn't it be funny? Like, it's all I'm saying. It's all I'm saying. Next ranked matchup. Let's see here. Give me A&M over South Carolina. South Carolina, clearly the best defensive line that they'll face so far this year, in my personal opinion. And I think a lot of people share that opinion if you know South Carolina and what they're capable of. I think Marcel Reed starts this game. I think Connor Wigman didn't respond maturely enough on the sideline to being benched last week against LSU. Something I hate to see, not just as a parent, but like as a former player myself. Understanding what it means to kind of be put in your place. When you're not doing your best for the team. And notice what I didn't say there. When I say I didn't say when you're not playing well, because like people are gonna be like, Connor Wigman played, exceptionally against Missouri, and it's like, okay, fine. And then he followed it up with a really underwhelming performance against Mississippi State the following week. Like, consistency is key. Marcel Reed was kind of like a hoodwink, option for Texas A&M to pull out of the bag. I just think it might actually be the long-term success factor here. He has shown an ability to throw the ball in some instances, but he didn't really against LSU. He threw the ball twice, but LSU's defense wasn't prepared for it. But here's the thing. South Carolina is going to have tape on that now. What do they prepare for? If you're smart, and I think Mike Elko is, I think you kind of hedge your bets on South Carolina, who, if there's any glowing spot to their team, it might be their defense, right? And it's definitely their defensive line at the bare minimum. Maybe you kind of hope that Shane Beamer and co kind of, I don't know, lean into that too heavily. You open up the intermediate and the short passing game and torch the point of the part of their defense that might not be as heavily touted as the very clear and present superstars that they do have on the front four. That's all I'll say about that. Another one where it's just like, yeah, give me A&M, but But uh, Clemson, Louisville. I think this is going to be a lot of points. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I think Clemson's defense is still very good, but I just think Louisville's offense is also very good. This will be a different caliber of team than Louisville's played all year, and they've struggled against lesser opponents. That's perfectly fair. That's why I'm taking Clemson to win. But it's another one of those like this is a less of like one of those like but games as it is like Louisville just like does have the ability to do this if they're playing their best football. Whereas other teams in these situations, like I don't think that is necessarily what you would say about them on any given Saturday. So yeah, give me Clemson. Keep a close eye on this one. This will definitely be up on the screen, even though the next game is what I'm actually going to be watching. But we're not talking about it right now because neither of the teams playing in it are ranked. Kentucky over Tennessee, Tennessee over Kentucky. Kentucky's going into Neyland. Tennessee's offense hasn't looked fantastic in recent weeks. I don't think it'll need to. I think that Dylan Sampson is going to have a fantastic game against this Kentucky defense, who seems to have quit. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the last couple games. It's a little icky, quite frankly. And yes, a grown man, 30 plus years, just said icky. Deal with it. Yeah, I think if you're Tennessee, you look to establish the run game. You utilize your defense to just absolutely bully what has been otherwise an atrocious Kentucky offense. And you don't have to put up a ton of points. You just need to put up enough to force Kentucky into an untenable situation. And they might already be there, quite frankly, before kickoff. But wouldn't it be funny? No, I'm just kidding. This is going to come up on the spreadsheet here in a second. SMU Pittsburgh. The talking point for this game, because I am running low on time, Rhett Lashley, head coach, SMU, against Pat Narduzzi, head coach, Pittsburgh. Rhett Lashley used to be with Miami. Pat Narduzzi, Pittsburgh. The history of these two coaches against each other, Rhett Lashley has absolutely eviscerated Pat Narduzzi defenses. So, give me SMU. I'm taking the 7.5 points. Pittsburgh is undefeated for now. They will not remain that way after this weekend. That is my prediction. That said, we're going to talk about this one in just a second as well. Let's go real quick through these unranked matchups that I am interested in. Oh, I didn't touch on Ole Miss, Arkansas. Ole Miss, you have to cover this game. You have to. Like, your offense needs to get into gear and really put down an Arkansas offense that's been beat up. That's all I really have to say about that. Vautech over Syracuse. Syracuse offense absolutely atrocious. Threw 3 pick sixes in the first half against Pittsburgh. That's another thing that's kind of baked into the Pitt SMU game, is that a lot of people are going to look at that box score, or the score rather, and say like, oh man, Pitt's offense did really great. Not really. Their defense did fantastic. I just think SMU isn't going to hand the ball over as much as they did last week against Duke, especially when you go -6 in the turnover margin and you still find a way to win. Like, yeah, Rhett Lashley was kind of like apologetic on the field, almost like he's like, we shouldn't have won this game. But, we did, and then probably did an about face and absolutely tore into those poor kids in the locker room after a win, no less. So give me Vautech. Vanderbilt at Auburn. I like Vandy. Give me Vandy. I think they find their way back into the rankings after this weekend. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know who's going to fall out to give them a way back in. I think they should still be in as it stands right now with how close they played Texas last weekend. Give me Vanderbilt over Auburn. Nebraska UCLA, I think, is going to be an absolutely atrocious game offensively. Florida State at North Carolina at Florida State. Mac Brown has never beaten the Seminoles. Florida State has not beaten really anyone this year. Something's got to give. Really interested to see the outcome of that one. UCF making coaching changes, but favored by 6 points at home against Arizona. I don't know why the team that's making staff overhauls in the middle of the season, well, the tail end of the season really, is getting any sort of favoritism by Vegas. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe Arizona just, is still not a great football team, and that's just where the number's going to stay until they prove otherwise. Give me this game to be the one that they prove otherwise. Give me Arizona over UCF. USC Washington. Washington has to establish the run game. The USC defense, because Lincoln Riley refuses to decrease his tempo in late in games where he is winning. This defense has played, they played 90 plus snaps last week, and they didn't need to. They're tired. They're coming off of 2 straight heartbreaking losses where they have had to play hard to stay close against teams that they should have beaten. I like Washington in this game. I can't believe I'm saying it. Give me Washington to cover as home underdogs. Take the 2.5 points. Get Jonah Coleman the ball. Jed Fish. I keep hearing from people that you are a good, game planner and schemer and this, that, and the other. I need to see it. I need to see it this week, and I need you to do the right thing and attack the parts of this USC team that are attackable. Okay? I'm not saying that you can't stretch the field against them. You have the weapons on the outside. It's just I need to stop seeing this cutesy stuff with switching the quarterback somewhat sporadically throughout the game. Get the run game established early. Force USC to commit to the box. Open up the intermediate passing game. Force the defense to spread. Just like slowly until it finally breaks, okay? They're going to score on you, so you have to score. Like, that's really the end of it. Like, both teams could easily win this game. I'm taking Washington, though. I think USC's troubles continue, and Washington's somewhat abate temporarily before they go on the road and play Penn State the week after. And then last but not least, give me Baylor over TCU. We talked earlier in the season about Dave Aranda and his days being numbered and which game was going to be the one or the last one for him. The season has turned around with Sawyer Robertson under center. I like what I'm seeing. I was a big Josh Hoover homer earlier in the season because of the points he was putting up. He hasn't been putting them up as consistently in recent weeks. So fade Hoover, buy Sawyer. Give me the Bears. I love it. Now, 2 picks or locks of the week. We are positive again. It took way longer than I would have liked, but let's get into this real quick. So, we are taking Tennessee over Kentucky as our guaranteed. And I just want to make sure I'm not smoking crack cocaine. That's a good coin toss one. I think that's the one that I'm leaning. Okay. We're taking Tennessee over Kentucky. We are taking SMU over Pitt. James Franklin has 1 win over a top 5 program in his tenure as head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions. Ryan Day has 2 over equally ranked teams. Somebody's going to improve their record. And I think James Franklin ties it up. Give me Penn State to put OSU on red alert this weekend, because you know damn well if they lose that game, Ohio State fans, boosters, everybody that poured their heart, soul, and cold hard cash into this season you got to go fucking do it. If they lose this game Saturday morning, do they make the playoff? Serious question. And I know that sounds ape shit to suggest, but they'll have 2 losses in conference play. Indiana's undefeated. Now, they have to play Ohio State, but if Ohio State drops down to 2 conference losses, they still have Indiana and Michigan on their schedule. And as bad as Michigan is, I'm not writing off anything in big-time rivalry matchups at all, ever. You'll never see me do it. So I'm almost done, Bubba. You want to come help me finish? All right, come on. I'm just saying, if it ends up being in a situation where Indiana only has one loss and it is to Ohio State, much to the chagrin of Ohio State fans, they're now potentially 10-2 or 9-3, or say they do win out and then they go. Sorry, 10-2. Sorry, say they win out and they do go to the conference championship and they play, say, Oregon, right? And then Oregon beats them. Now they're 10-3. Do they get in that large bid? I don't know. Chew on it, learn it, live it, love it. I got to go. Trick-or-treating happening right now in the Pacheco household. I love you all. I'll catch you guys next week. Hold your